Hello and welcome. In this video, we will learn about some parameters of risk of mutual funds. Okay? Now, these are the parameters that we usually compare with other mutual funds of different category before selecting a fund. Alright? So, they do not tell you whether a fund is good or bad, but you can use it for comparative analysis. Alright, so let us start with alpha. There are many parameters, for example, alpha, beta, standard deviation, R squared, Sharpe ratio, Sortino ratio, etc. We will look at only a few of them, starting with alpha. Now, let us say that a benchmark index of a mutual fund is giving 10% returns. Okay, the benchmark index of a mutual fund is giving 10% returns, and the mutual fund itself is giving 14%. Okay, let us say that a mutual fund is giving 14% returns and the benchmark index of mutual fund, this mutual fund is giving 10% returns. Now, this mutual fund is giving 4% more returns than the benchmark index, correct? And so, the alpha of this mutual fund will be 4%. It is this minus this. How much more returns is the fund giving? That is what the alpha tells us. Okay? Next, let us say that a benchmark index is giving 12% returns and the mutual fund is giving 11% returns. Okay, the mutual fund is giving 11% returns and the benchmark index of this fund is giving 12% returns. Now, this mutual fund is giving 1% lesser than the index, and so the alpha of this mutual fund will be minus 1%. Alright, so it is giving 1% less than index. Now, this alpha value should be higher than benchmark index. If it is lower, then what is the point of investing in the mutual fund itself? You can invest directly in the index fund, correct? In index fund, of course, you will get this much return. In mutual fund, you are supposed to get more returns because you are taking more risk, or the fund manager is supposed to manage the fund so that you get better returns. But here, unfortunately, you are getting 1% less returns, and so this is not a good sign. Okay, so higher the alpha, the better. Next is beta. It tells us how sensitive the mutual fund is when compared with the index. Okay, beta of the benchmark index will be 1. Beta of the benchmark index will be always 1. Now, if the beta of mutual fund is 1, then what does it mean? It means that if the benchmark index moves up by 1%, then the value of our mutual fund will also move up by 1%. If the benchmark index falls by 1%, then our mutual fund also will fall by 1%. That is what it means by same beta. Okay. Now, instead of beta equal to 1, if the beta of the mutual fund is 0.7, then it means if the index moves up by 1%, then the mutual fund moves up by 0.7%. If the index falls by 1%, then the mutual fund would fall by 0.7%. Okay, so this is what the beta tells us. Alright, now should the beta be more, should the beta be less? It is subjective. If you want a safer return, then the beta value should be lower. If you are willing to take risk, then the beta value can be higher. Okay, that is about beta. Next, we have standard deviation. It tells us how volatile the mutual fund is. Let me give you an example. Let us say that the return of a mutual fund is 15%, and let us say the standard deviation of this particular mutual fund is 3%. If you are from stat background, you know what standard deviation is. Okay, if you do not know, let me explain. So let us say the return of a mutual fund is 15%, standard deviation is 3%. It means that the mutual fund returns will be between 12 to 18%, 68% of the time. Now, how did I get 12 and 18? See, the returns is 15%. 15 minus 3 is 12. 15 plus 3 is 18. So, if you look at the return of this particular mutual fund, it would be between 12% to 18%, 68% of the time. And it would be between two standard deviation, which is between 9 to 21 percentage, 95% of the time. Okay, how did I get 9? So 15 minus 3 into 2. 15 plus 3 into 2, 21. So this is one standard deviation, this is two standard deviations. So it means that the returns would be between this and this 68% of the time, between this and this 97% of the time. Okay. Next, we have Sharpe ratio. It tells us whether the return of a mutual fund is due to fund manager's ability to manage the fund, or is it due to the risk taken by the fund manager. Okay. For example, let us say that there is a fund A, which is giving 20% return, and Sharpe ratio of this is 0.89, and there is a fund B which gives 15% and the Sharpe ratio is 1.3%. Okay, so not percent, 1.3. Now, Sharpe ratio considers risk-free return, which is generally government bonds. Okay. Now, looking at the returns of two mutual funds, the 20% fund, which is fund A, is giving higher returns when compared with this, right? But when we look at the Sharpe ratio, when we compare the Sharpe ratio, we have higher Sharpe ratio here. It means that for a unit of risk taken, this mutual fund has capacity to give higher returns. Okay, per unit of risk taken, this mutual fund has capacity to give higher return. You can infer this when you compare the Sharpe ratios of two mutual funds. Alright, by only looking at this or this, you cannot figure out what it is. Alright, yes. Now, let me go to my dashboard and show you two very good websites where you can get information about mutual funds. Okay. Alright. So the first website is advisorcoach.com. Advisorcoach.com. This is a very good website which gives you a lot of details about mutual funds. The second website is thefunddo.com. Once again, a very good website for mutual funds. Now let me go to Advisor Coach and search for a fund. I'll search Nippon India and I'll select a fund randomly. So let me select Nippon India Banking and PSU Debt Fund. When I click on the fund, all the details regarding the mutual fund appear here. So the launch date is here and the benchmark is here. Minimum investment is here. Total assets, AUM is here. CAGR is here. NAV is here. And returns are here. Okay. Let me come down and let me come to this. See here, you have the risk parameters. First is alpha. It is 3.35, meaning it is giving 3.35 more returns than the index, benchmark index, which is good. Beta is 1.9. Now, what does this mean? If the index moves up by 1%, this fund value moves up by 1.9. If the index falls by 1, this fund falls by 1.9. Okay. Next, we have standard deviation 1.32. It means the fund returns will be between this minus standard deviation and this plus standard deviation. How many percent of the time? 68%. Okay. So that is what this tells us. Sharpe ratio is minus 0.13. Now when we say negative Sharpe ratio, it means that it is giving lesser returns than risk-free returns. Risk-free returns here in this case is government bonds. So now this negative Sharpe ratio is telling us that it is giving lesser returns than risk-free returns. Okay. And looking at only this, you cannot conclude anything, because there are many other things that you have to check too. Alright? Yes, so that is about the risk parameters. Now, let me give you my suggestion, or rather I can say my opinion. Okay? So this is just my opinion, and I am not saying my opinion is right. Alright? You are free to choose whatever you want. There is a doctor, and his profession is to treat the patients. Correct? When we go to a doctor, we tell us what we are feeling. We tell us our symptoms. Like I'm having a headache, I can't sleep at night, my leg is aching, I have stomach ache, I have vomit, and so on. And this doctor, he has experience of many years. He has studied medicine for certain duration, and he has practiced it too. And based on his experience and based on the symptoms that you have mentioned him, he will suggest you the medicine, or he will give you the medicine. Right? And when you take that medicine, you will feel good. And for making you feel good, for giving you medicine, you give doctor a fees. Right? Now, you can look at Google, you can go to Google, search for the symptoms, and you can diagnose yourself. You can take medicine by yourself. Or you can study whatever the doctor has studied for various years, and you can take medicine on the decision. But that would not be very good, correct? If you have all the time to do so, you can do. But once again, this experience of doctor will be different from experience of you. So just to treat your body, if you study medicine, it won't make sense, correct? Now, in the same way, mutual fund advisor works. Now, as human beings, we have different goals. For example, you may want to build a house or buy an apartment. You may want to buy a land or a plot. You may want money for your kid's education, or for his marriage, or for your retirement. Now, whatever goals you have, you can take this goal and tell it to a mutual fund advisor. And the mutual fund advisor has studied a lot of things, and he has experience. And according to your requirement, he will suggest a mutual fund. According to your budget, he will suggest a mutual fund. And according to that, you can buy it. And ultimately, you will reach your goal. And for helping you reach your goal, he will charge a fee. And that is how he makes a living, correct? Now, instead of giving him the fees, if you believe that you can save the fees by learning everything by yourself and investing by yourself, you will save the fees. But as I have mentioned, if you have got the time, you can do that. But there are a lot of things to consider before you go and invest in a mutual fund. Whatever I have explained in this video series is what you have to know about your mutual fund. You cannot just go and invest in a mutual fund just by looking at the web or by looking at a video series. Okay, there are more things to analyze before you select a fund. So you have two options. One thing is you have to learn everything by yourself and then invest in a mutual fund, or you can go to a mutual fund advisor, pay him some money and get the job done. Now I feel that the second option is better. Second option meaning going to a mutual fund advisor. I know some things about mutual fund, but I would like to get an advice of mutual fund advisor, and then I would like to invest in that mutual fund. So this is the one that I prefer. All right. And as I said, it is my opinion only. You are free to choose whatever you want. And by saying that, we will end our video series here. This is it for this video series. I hope you have understood various concepts of mutual fund. I'll see you in a different series. Till then, take care and thank you for watching.